I got Adam's icon.
Yeah,
It's probably what everybody at work sees.
there he is.
Could it be any redder? Are you in the pits of hell right now?
He's he's
Bring in the heat.
Yeah.
he's got an underground lair under his house that's all red.
Is this not what you imagined? The Red
That's
Kingdom?
exactly what we
That's
imagined.
exactly
yes.
what I pictured.
I don't even know that we're going to do an intro, Adam. We're probably just going to start right here with this. Welcome to the podcast. No setup. I won't even explain anything to you. We're coming live to you from the pits of hell right now.
There we go. That's hey, perfect.
Thank you for being on, man. We appreciate it.
That's gonna be fun. I love
Yeah.
it.
I can't believe, like, we talked about it a few times and it just never worked out, but I'm glad that we got to do this. So
Yeah. I know we tried a year ago, and we were in Hilton Head or something was going on. So I'm no guest, right? I'm the first guest of the year, or
first guest of the year. Yeah. It's
nice.
I was trying to think last year. I think, did Rennie join us for like the end of the season wrap up or something? I don't know. I feel like that we had maybe just like one.
Well, was Brennan's 2 years ago?
Well, Brennan filled in for you once, and then Junior's done it a couple times. We had Leon.
But Brennan was on the one that I was on that
yeah,
didn't get recorded.
where we only recorded half of it. Yeah,
right. I always thought that he said something genius, and so you just decided to.
No, it
cover it
was
up.
so funny.
You just used the term "we," Kevin, and it was not "we," it was you.
Yeah. The beginning of that podcast was so good. Like, he was just, he's very witty, he's quick, and we were just talking about so many different things. And then I was like, oh, so now I set it so it like starts recording automatically. So then I don't even have to worry about it.
Nice.
But I guess I'm drinking alone tonight. I've got two of our league
water
drinkers.
bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, come on now. That red would go perfect in my my current lookout.
Yeah, it would,
it's like a filter. It's like a filter. When you put it up in the camera, you look like you're in red.
That's actually what Adam has in front of his camera right now. He's got a red water bottle sitting right in front of his. Hey, there you go, Dave.
Perfect.
So, all right. Well, Adam, Dave and I were talking that we normally start off with awards, which we're going to do, but we're going to make these like kind of, at least I am, season awards, kind of like talking about what we do. So I put Dave on the spot, so he wasn't ready for it. So I'll start. We'll do it in reverse and talking about the Hillbilly of the Season award. And it's got to go to none other than all of our dear friends, Ed. He's the poster child of it. And the reason is actually Ed had a great season by Ed's account, but he just needed to hold on for one more week, like just set his lineup for one final week, and then he makes the playoffs. Well, yes, but even that, I mean, he had built himself such a points lead, and he had been doing so well, and I think we all know Ed has a ton going on in his life and everything else, but I would have loved to see him be able to make the playoffs, and but so it was a bummer he couldn't, and I don't know what Ed's future will be if he'll want to play with us and continue on. I hope he does, but I think he's getting real close to cracking that. There was so much hope going into the season, and I'll let you guys kind of hear about that.
He had a couple really big weeks, a couple low weeks that weren't because of non-engagement, just because of happenstance or whatever, and then he just about week 8, 9 just fell off the map.
Well, little ADHD there going on with Ed, so
poor guy.
Well, and I'd even said, like, we were getting close to the end there, and I was like, hey, I'm not texting Ed anymore. I'm not going to be like, hey man, it's Thursday morning, like, make sure that everything's set. It's like, I did that for a few weeks there, but like at the end wasn't going to let him do that, and so wish he would have, because the funny thing is, week 1 of the playoffs, when he was out, he made all the adjustments he needed to in his lineup for the consolation stuff, and like, did great. So it was like a week too late for Ed.
Yeah.
So but he's not the only one. Lee, I was trying to go back and look at power rankings, but I deleted a bunch of old photos off my phone and stuff, and so I I know Lee started the season out really strong too.
Yeah.
And so another team that was surprising that they didn't make the playoffs only because of how well they did, like, first half of the season. So Ed's not alone in guys that kind of just faltered at the end, but more so only because his was just like, not because he set his lineup. And that's just like that's the Achilles heel of fantasy football, is leaving spots open.
The Danny Poundstone of the league now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that makes like me and Lee were the only two that didn't make the playoffs and not win a high point week. And yet I made a lineup every week. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah. Sorry, Dave.
I'm gonna go down here to hell with Adam. All
right.
But so your season.
So I gave you no time to think about it. So Miller Time team of
Kevin
the year.
put me on the spot. We normally do the week, Miller Time team of the week, and he's like, hey, right before 11th hour, he's like, let's change it up and do season long. And so if I think about it like that, there would have been some good candidates. We got one on right here that won the league, the regular season and went all the way to the wire. We had another guy that won 5 different high point weeks and it was battling for first all season long. But I'm not going to change my answer. I'll stick with Kevin.
Oh,
I know.
3 weeks in a row.
I know.
3 weeks in a row.
I know.
Yeah, share the
it's
love.
In the books. It's in the history books. That's probably never going to be done again.
Yeah.
No, and it won't be
not by me.
Not by you.
Not by me.
So, but yeah, I mean, you went in as the underdog, at least on the anecdotal underdog. Just, you.
Come on, it's so weak. So weak. Anybody can win a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer and Brian Billick won a Super Bowl quarterback coach conference. Come on, I mean, I think of them. I think of Kevin. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I did, Adam, I brought this up to Dave before you came on because I was going to talk about this, whether or not you were able to make it or not. And this is not something Dave loves talking about. And I wanted to feel
I'll be back up.
I said, I was just thinking about this the other day as we were kind of all talking. And I think because, you had mentioned it when we were at Andy's and it just kind of like dawned on me. We weren't doing the podcast then, but we've had chat for a long time, and our league is pretty active. I don't know that we talked nearly enough about, or that people were making such a big deal about the fact that you won the regular season league 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. I went back and looked at it because I almost had to like remind. And there was a couple years where, just going back and looking at it, you tied with different guys like with the same record, but you had more points than them. So you were the number 1 overall seed all those years. And it was just like, that was mind boggling. If we were doing a podcast back then, I feel like that would be,
let's just say
of conversation.
If this is year 1 of another run, the podcast is going to end.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 2 years,
So
we won't be able to handle it.
No.
So somebody needs to step up next year.
Yeah. Congratulations on another league win, and
appreciate that.
Yeah.
So any and I no trade secrets or anything, but some broad advice like of how you maintain like the ability to be able to be up in the top most years.
I mean, so when I think about, I mean, you can never sit still. And I know, Dave, you kicked yourself this season for it.
Yeah.
But I would say that every single season, every single week, you got to make moves. Even if you're doing good, you got to keep making moves. And so I know people say, Adam makes a lot of moves. He trades. He makes, I didn't make as many free agent this year as I had in past years, but you always got to be making moves. And you may get burned, and there's going to be years where you get burned and it hurts. But man, you got to always be making moves. You always got to be trying to get better. And for me, I'd rather swing for the fences and miss than not swing at all and just stay still. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what anybody that's asked me that question, that's what I always say is make moves. I don't care if you're in first place, you're undefeated, make moves. Always try to make moves.
So, so this season specifically, did you feel pressure to make moves because you saw Travis and, Andy, like it didn't seem like you could ever really get space, you know what I mean? Like It seemed like that those guys were always right there.
Oh, I was chasing Travis all season long. I mean, I know that I had gotten ahead, and then but I was always chasing Travis. So yeah, for sure, always pressure, always looking over your shoulder and you can't sit still. That's I think the biggest thing I try to do, and I'll get burnt. I've made trades a lot, and I don't know if I made one last year. Every couple of years I make a trade, and I've been burned lately. The trade I made this year didn't work out for me. I traded for Nick Chubb a couple years ago, and then he got hurt. I mean, those things happen. And Kevin, you made a trade, right? And
Yeah.
you just don't know how those things are going to work out. But I always think you got to be making moves.
Yeah, it's interesting. I look back at that part of my season and I thought I'm just a couple pieces away from feeling like that I would be really, really
Mhm.
good. And then I make that trade and it, I honestly I don't know how I ended up winning, only because like I would have thought that would have derailed my season. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like just
Especially
because
with how good those
lose,
other two guys did.
yeah, trading
Mhm.
away
Oh, yeah.
Puka and trading away Ingram and then getting a guy that you can't play the rest of the season. And,
Yeah.
and both of those guys would have been in my lineup for the rest of the season, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so, but yeah, like I don't regret trying to make it, because I felt like that if I had, but looking back now, I kind of look back at Ingram's numbers and I was like, you know what? I was probably a little bit selfish because I was looking for like those big points. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because he
Yeah.
was constant, he was consistent at like 6, and then you look at everybody for the season, you're like, honestly, he's probably upper middle of like
Yeah.
what tight ends were. You know what I mean? And so it's tough to try to find guys that are going to score touchdowns in that position like week in and week out.
You were forced to make a lot of decisions, like because or a lot of moves because of injuries, right? I mean, you lost your
Yeah, I
quarterback,
mean,
you lost
yeah,
Taylor.
injuries and then just bad drafting. I would say that like I probably had a bottom tier draft. I mean, just look at the fact that, we teased, I had 5 probably Jacksonville Jaguars on my team at one time. I don't know if I drafted that many, but, and then go to the championship game and probably more out of like happenstance than anything. The only
Yeah.
Jacksonville Jaguar that I started was the defense, and it got me 18.
Yeah.
I should have played ETN.
Yep.
He would have done fine. But like,
And that was the last one you picked up too. That's the irony, right? The Jags. That was
Yeah.
the last one you picked up. You picked them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it just, but I definitely had to overcome being a little lopsided, and because Jacksonville's team was fine this year. I mean, even Lawrence, you know what I mean? He was playable all season long, except for when he was hurt. But having, we talked about it on the podcast a bunch. I'm sure that Adam would feel the same. Quarterback, running back's not a great combo unless your team's going to score a bunch of points.
Yeah.
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 And I probably for my tendencies, I had the perfect storm of I didn't really have injuries. I just had underperforming guys, but I was loyal to them for way too long.
Right.
And that's like I wasn't forced to make changes like you were. I would have rather a couple of those guys just get hurt, and then I'd get rid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, some of my moves early on were because of just like seeing bad performance, like Dalvin Cook. You know what I mean? He obviously, didn't end up doing anything. I think I had, Christian Kirk and a couple other guys at wide receiver that just obviously weren't doing anything. And so then I was just looking, got really lucky with Kyron Williams.
Oh, you killed it. You killed it in
Yeah.
the free agent pickups. The Kyron Williams, the Pukas, you killed
Yeah.
the free agent pickups early. And
So
how about
that's
Kyron
probably
Williams?
really what.
So I was like, why isn't he getting votes for rookie of the year? Like, I was trying to figure that out. Any idea why?
I don't know why.
Maybe because
other than
he's getting
the
no
Rams
press. He's
kind
getting
of-
no press for rookie of the year. Do you know why?
Yeah.
I know.
Why would you say?
He's not a rookie.
Oh, is he not? He was.
He was on the team last year. Played 10 games. I found this out today. Played 10 games last year. 35 carries for 139 yards. He goes from 35 carries, 139 yards, second year to being what I forget what I figured out. He's the second ranked running back, average points.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
and
crazy.
what was it? Cam Akers that was ahead of him at draft time, and then like that just
Daryl Henderson. I mean,
yeah.
So now I'm on the hunt
for
I'm gonna
next
go out
year's.
there. Yeah. I mean, how do you do that? 2020. I thought he was a rookie until today. I guess you guys did too, right? I mean,
No,
nobody.
I didn't. I really didn't think about it. I
Yeah.
just figured it was because if he was a rookie, it's generally early success gets a lot of momentum. So whoever first half of the season
Well, and
does really well, they
he would be
they
overshadowed probably by Puka on his own team. I mean,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah. But not
Yeah.
a rookie. It's crazy. I thought he was a rookie this whole time, but no. There's guys out there right now
yeah
that didn't do anything
Like-
for their team. They could be the number 2 running back next year in scoring.
yeah, and then they're
Yeah.
gonna shine like the second half of the season and
yeah.
We got to beat Kevin to the punch. That's the thing. We got to
yeah.
beat Kevin to the punch.
Yeah.
Well, beat him on draft day. Like if you could draft that guy and then not drop them when they don't start off hot because they don't get their carries until later. So that's the key. It's like
So, so I text both you guys and just kind of asked you if you want to share. We can kind of take turns, but you know, if as we look back and close the chapter, it's hard to believe that the season's over. We only got one more week of regular season football. It seems like yesterday that we were at the tavern waiting for Adam to show up. And but as we kind of look back at the season, like what are some things that you'll remember from this season? What are some of the big storylines that you remember, whether they're in football or like in our fantasy league?
you want to go first, Adam?
Sure, I'll go first. For me, I think so. I did come up with a couple of things here. For me, the scoring this year, I thought the scoring was really high, and so I went back and looked at it a little bit. And you know, we've always thought about that 100-point mark, and you know, I try to be a guy that's going to score 100 every week, and so maybe, and I'm not going to get a high points, which I didn't get this year, but you know, 100 points is a good score. This year, I mean, week 3 it was 182 points. Week 4 was 145, 147 in week 6. I mean, there were 8 weeks where the high point score was over 133, and we played 17 weeks. That's half the time. It was 130 or higher. There was 2 weeks that 140. One week 140 wasn't enough because somebody else had 150, and another week when Ed scored 182, somebody else had scored 151. So it's like the scoring was unbelievable this year.
And it had nothing to do with points per reception or any kind of rule change. It was just normal points.
Just points. Now, I think when I thought about it, you know, I'll get on to another point later, but I think there weren't as many injuries this year, and so I think that helped. But the other thing is that it was inconsistent, right? So, you know, Travis was always going to score 100 to 110, 120 every week. He finished high. I scored kind of a little bit lower than that, but in that same ballpark. But then you had guys come out of nowhere like Brennan and Brian, 158 one week and 70 the next week. It was like super inconsistent, but the high scoring, I felt there was a lot of scoring this year.
Yeah, and as you talk about that, Brian, I think, was probably the poster child of like that Jekyll and Hyde lineup. Like he had the capability of scoring 150 any week, but then he would follow it up with a 70-point, you know what I mean, loss to somebody, and it just seemed like that was like the pattern of his season.
Yeah.
I mean, there were, you know, Kevin knows this, there were injuries, but a lot of quarterback injuries. I mean, look how many teams are playing a backup quarterback, but some of those guys put up big numbers. And so if you played one of those guys, and then running back anymore, there were these, you know, like Kyron Williams, guys that kind of came out of nowhere and scored 1 billion points, you know. And so the scoring stayed up because there was replacement. Now I'd say Jefferson was a big hit for him going down, but there's other wide receivers that stepped up and had big games all the time. So yeah, that's interesting though.
Jeff, 8 weeks was over 130 points. I mean, was the high score. That's
well, the one I kind of thought of was, you know, Travis ended up getting 5 high points wins, and I kind of look back, he had like pretty much every week that wasn't a bye week where McCaffrey and Mahomes played the same time, they both combined for at least like pretty close to, if not more than 40 points. Like that's a pretty good base every week to get. And so like, and you know, others of us have drafted McCaffrey in the past, and he almost like he's hurt now. Would go figure, he's not going to play week 18, but he played every week, you know, and that with him, that was always the big rub. He missed, like, at least when I had him, and I think other people, he'd miss a few weeks. And I mean, Travis benefited from a full healthy season of McCaffrey. You could see when he's used the way he's used, and then having a quarterback, you know, like, you know, Mahomes was pretty solid. He always had close to 20 or more. So, you know, I didn't have 40 points out of a quarterback running back every week for sure.
So one of the things that I just and again, I don't do nearly as much research on this as Adam does, but depth. Like I felt like that the waiver wires had players that you could play more so this season than I remember in the past. Like even week 17 going into the playoffs, while the quarterback selection might have felt a little thin, there were guys out there. Now, again, I don't know that anybody wanted to play Flacco against the Jets, but he scored 30,
Yeah.
30 points. Adam would have loved to put Flacco in there if he would have, if you would have known that he would have got that kind of production. But even like the Las Vegas running back was available, and he was projected to score 12 points. Week 17, he's on nobody's, radar.
Yeah.
And I just thought that there were I can remember being in situations in the past seasons where it's like you get an injury or you got a bye week and you're like,
there's nobody.
There's nobody to pick up. Like I'm playing somebody that is just going to do nothing, and it just felt like that there were options at every position outside of maybe tight end that you felt like that you could really go in and play them, and there's a good chance they're going to score a touchdown.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that and what Dave said combines with what kind of my second thing was there were quarterback injuries this year. And so, I mean, Cousins and Herbert, I lost Herbert at the end of the season, Richardson, Watson, Rodgers, Justin Fields missed some time. Kyler Murray was hurt. Lawrence missed a couple games. That guy from Cincinnati, what's his name?
Joe Burrow.
Yeah. No, the other one. Oh, yeah. He's not the quarterback. Yeah, he got hurt, right? And he lost a lot of time. Yeah. So, I mean, quarterbacks, but when you think about running backs that were lost, who do you think about? I mean, I think about Chubb. Mm-hmm. Who else?
Yeah. Some guys missed some starts, but not like anybody would, not as much IR as. And
I looked at the IR for wide receivers today, and at best there were wide receiver 3s that went on IR this year. I mean, at best, you have a Tank Dell who was a wide receiver 3. Now Jefferson missed a lot of time there. He's the one, but at a position where we start 3 guys, when Jefferson missing time, wide receivers, I mean, tight ends, Andrews got hurt at the end, Hawkinson got hurt at the end, but really quarterback was the only position that really suffered a lot. And that leans into why I think there was a lot of players available on the waiver wire to play. And I certainly tried to figure out that quarterback thing at the end, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of did. You just didn't play him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had Kyler Murray, and I didn't play him. He would not have won me anything, but
yeah. Well, then you picked up Carr at the end too, and he did all right.
I picked up Carr. I picked up Mullins. I didn't pick up Mullins. I put Jaron Hall. I mean, I was thinking about doing a million different things.
Yeah.
And couldn't figure it out there at the end. But.
And that's a tough place.
What else you got, Dave?
Did you?
So my second one was injuries. Yeah, kind of injuries, okay. and not really having a lot of injuries. I thought this season we didn't have a lot of people have to deal with a ton of injuries.
I don't want to beat a dead Ed, but my other one was, we already kind of talked about it, was Ed's Jekyll and Hyde of his great draft. Like, I thought he had a good draft. He had some interesting picks that that worked out, and he was engaged. He made a trade, and then he just disappeared from the face of the earth and was in the 40s, and then didn't make any changes. And
I got busy. I can't help it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's tough managing 2 teams, Dave.
I did like, Brennan really came on at the end, and he finished strong with a couple different high point weeks. And it's like one of those things where a lot of times we talked about this on podcasts where a team gets hot at the end and they get rewarded by making the playoffs and having a decent run. But, it pretty much didn't happen this year because all the teams that barely got in gotten ousted right away. And it was the top 4 teams are the ones that made it through.
Well, Brennan's got a Katie now that he's married to, so he's got to play better.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he's got a Katie now.
She's not going to allow him to just keep throwing away money. He's got to do something. Oh, well, so that kind of we got any more storylines?
So I wrote down, Travis and I went neck and neck all year long. And so we were never more than a game apart, right? So we went into week 6, I think it was, or 7 undefeated, and I won. And then, I held it he was always a game, either a game behind me or we were tied the entire season. I never had any room to breathe, and I knew I had to win at the end of the season just to hold off because he had the points on me. So neck and neck the whole season, Travis. And I thought I think it's unusual to have two guys neck and neck the entire season.
Well, Dave and I mentioned that this season really was fun to watch, even for everybody, because, until the very end, everybody was still in it. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't like that big gap where you got a team that's like counted out. And at the top, you don't have somebody that's just running away with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And because there were so many of you guys with a lot of wins, a bunch of us that had hardly any wins still had a chance because it didn't take very many wins to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it was interesting because, like, if you look back historically, I would say that you normally have to play right around 500 to win. And this year, you know what I mean? Like, there were some teams obviously at the very bottom that were getting in with less than that or had the opportunity to. And so, yeah, it was very kind of a abnormal season when it comes to that. Like you said, Adam, without somebody. Usually, if you start the season off, I don't remember what it was it 8-0?
I think I got to 8 or 9-0. I don't know when I played you.
Yeah. Normally you start a season off like that. There's such a gap between you and everybody else that you've kind of run away with it by then. And so testament to Travis that, you go on that run, but he's right there with you the whole time. I think that's abnormal. I think it's abnormal that you got teams with 3 wins, 4 wins that are at the end of the season still fighting for playoff spots. I think that was, it was a little bit, and teams at the bottom, I mean, we always have teams that are kind of mid or low bottom that have a lot of points just because they've played against teams that score a lot of points. But I mean, high points from Brennan 2 weeks in a row, really close together at the end of the season as one of the lower teams, like all that stuff. You don't always see that.
Yeah. I mean, if I look back in the history book, this is the wrong book. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see.
Injustice.
Scoot it over a little bit. Yes. There we go.
There we go.
Injustice, Prejudice against Adam and Tuner.
That's a big book, dude.
It's the thing. So that's not the history book. I got the history book here says the same thing. You have to win. You have to have more wins than 5 to make the playoffs. If you go back into our history book here.
The annals, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll put this other book back on the shelf here. That one doesn't go very far.
I mean, I know that you got to align yourself with somebody, you know what I mean? But like, you probably could pick a better. I mean, he brings a lot of this on himself, Adam. You have to understand that.
Hey, winners win. That's you know what? Winners win.
Oh.
Is it the same idea of the hot girl keeps a best friend that's really ugly?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going with here?
Yeah. I mean, you said it, Dave. I didn't say it.
I know.
Before we move on, like, I think, we've mentioned a couple of times, but Andy joining the league, and I was wrong that he had never been in it before. I guess I thought he had, but just because we'd been at his house and his son was in it. But boy, he came on like a fire. He had a good draft. He engaged. He picked up good people. He started good people, and he
watched the podcast.
Watch the podcast. That's a key element.
Yeah.
And then he made it to the, close to the end, right at the top. So good job, Andy. I'm going to call Danny and see if I can get him back in, but
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy, for joining. We'll see you in a couple of years. We'll come back and we'll let you.
Well,
for the reunion in a couple of years.
For fried chicken and virtual golf, I think we just have to take the L's. You know what I mean?
Yes, no doubt. I'd give that up. I mean, I always say this every year, and the only person I would question is Ed. But if you're, we don't force people to stay in by any means. But I assume we'll have all 12 of us back, next year. Won't be any changes. But if you're watching the podcast, you let me know. So we have plenty of time to find another person.
Yeah.
So you're gonna play again next year, Dave, or are you gonna? I mean, you took this year off. Are you gonna play next year?
I did take this year off. Thanks, Adam. I'm gonna give back into hell here.
Oh goodness. So I posed a question to these guys offline, and it's going to go into another thing that I just kind of had as a storyline, but I'll save it. I said if Adam takes a lot of pride in his fantasy football drafting, so this is a tough question for him to even consider because I think the answer would be no one. But so I asked these guys offline. I said, if you had to let one other member of the Hillbilly Harrison fantasy football league draft your team for you this coming year, who would you pick and why? All right. And so either one of you care to go first?
Go
Do
ahead,
you
Dave.
have one? Man, I'm gonna go with the rookie. I'll say you can go with Andy. Like, hey,
All
he
right.
doesn't know what he doesn't know, and he probably doesn't have the same allegiance to players that I do, and he won't pick certain people for me because he won't know. Now, if Philip comes back and decides to play next year, then I'll intervene and I'll take my drafting abilities back. That's the only caveat.
Yeah. Well, you could send him like a note, be like, hey,
Okay.
yeah. All right. So Dave picks Andy because he likes the fact that he doesn't have any biases and he hasn't been in the league long enough to pick up any bad habits. It's like that
Exactly.
first golf swing of the season. So,
And
Adam, who you got?
So Dave's taken to take a rookie in the first round, and now he's taking another rookie here in the last round.
Yeah,
There you
exactly.
go.
How'd B. John Robinson work out for you there, 4-10?
I know. I don't think he was my biggest problem though.
So for me, I thought about it because I really like the way Lee and Josh draft. But those guys, they put together good drafts, but it just hasn't worked out for them this year or the last couple of years. But so I started to look at it. I think drafts, and this kind of my way I approach drafts, is the rounds 3 through 8 are the winning rounds. That's where you win the draft. You're going to get a quarterback in rounds 3 through 8. You're going to try and get your wide receiver, your running back. Sometimes people go wide receiver, all wide receivers, and they get both their running backs. But that rounds 3 through 8. And I look back, one of the things I look back was this year at round 3 through 8 with Travis. And I mean, he got Patrick Mahomes, he got DJ Moore, he got David Montgomery. I mean, he just had star after star. Whereas a lot of us, there's 6 rounds there, and he I think he hit 5 out of 6, really good. And we all had duds, whether it was Dalvin Cook or whether it was Damian Pierce or whoever else it might have been. I really like the way Travis drafted there. And the other thing is, I said, well, let me think about this, because Travis is not, he's like 5th or 6th in the all-time wins category. He's been in the league a long time. He has really become probably the second best manager in the league. And I found this really interesting. His last time he had a losing record in the regular season was 2017. So that was 5 or 6 years ago. Travis has made the playoffs 13 consecutive years.
Oh my goodness.
Made the playoffs 13 consecutive years. The next best is myself at 4 and Rennie at 4. So 5 years ago we didn't make the playoffs. He's made the playoffs 13 straight years. He's got the third best playoff win percentage. He's got 3 championships in 3 playoff championships. I mean, he's second in career playoff wins. But just thinking about what he's put together over the last couple of years, and certainly 13 years in a row with a winning record, in the playoffs, is I'm on Team Travis when it comes out. I don't agree with Travis a lot of philosophical and rules and those other things that often get brought up. I don't agree with him there, but man, he could draft my team, and I think it would turn out to be okay. It turned out to be good.
Low key, I think that Travis is probably underappreciated for his manager skills. I think one thing is, if it's not talking about flex, politics, or Dave, he's really silent. Okay. So
exactly.
He doesn't really talk much. I don't think he probably watches the podcast again because I don't think he likes Dave. And so I think he probably avoids like an hour of listening to Dave talk.
He had quite a bit to say about the trade.
He did. Yeah, he's not a big fan of the Red Kingdom either. So,
no.
But I definitely respect what he's put together. And I mean, he's the second best manager in the league right now.
If I had to pick somebody to draft my team, it would be Josh. And here's the reason why. It would be impossible for me to be mad at Josh, even if he picked a terrible team, because he's so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I can pick a terrible team. Josh is going to pick probably a mediocre team for me, but I can't get mad. I mean, if Adam picked a mediocre team for me, I have these high expectations. I'd be pissed and be like, Matt. But Josh, I'm just like, oh, I mean, who'd be mad at that face?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I think this just came in. Adam just lost 1,000 Dickness points for being on this podcast.
Yeah.
And yet he's still 5 billion points ahead of Josh. So yeah, I mean, That's just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm picking Josh only because I can't get mad at him, even if he screws it up.
Fair
So
enough.
congratulations on that, Josh. What about we're talking about the draft? If I look back at draft night for myself, it's hard to second guess your draft when you finish the season third in the regular season and then win the championship. But I will be the first to admit that I didn't have a great draft. Those picks that you were talking about, Adam, rounds,
3
for
through
me
8.
probably rounds 4 through 11. Most of those guys didn't remain on my team. I swapped those out for guys that ended up doing better. But I would say that it started for me in my Jacksonville Jaguars love affair. I probably in round 4 would not have picked Trevor Lawrence. That would have been a good start for me. I got ETN, let him do his thing. I don't need the quarterback running back combo. I could have got Tua in that pick. I could have got anybody else that would have done great in that, in there. And so, that's probably if I had to go back and do something different. Now, again, that maybe that alters everything and I don't end
Yeah.
up winning the championship. So I don't know that I want to mess with a good thing. I don't want to take this season for granted. But if I just looked at my draft analytically, that was a bad pick for me at quarterback. And then from there on, lots of bad picks that I wish I had over. But like we've already talked about, I was able to fill those in with guys like Puka and Kyrene. And so it ended up being livable, but and I wouldn't change anything about the top 3 picks because those guys really ended up doing well for me in times where I needed them. But if you had to look back and say, hey, just one pick, if I could change one pick, I think this would have made a big difference. Dave, I know that's impossible because you needed to
I
make
know that's the thing. It's like
15 different picks, but
I wasn't one pick away. And plus it's like a domino effect because if I don't pick somebody and if I change one round, that's going to change who I would have picked and picked to pick because the easy like one answer would be to go back to round 3, and if I don't pick Devontae Smith and I pick Hurts instead, then I pick a different running back and move on. But if I had to just go one, I'd go to round 5, and if I would have picked Jones, Walker, Kamara, Breece Hall, anybody else besides Pierce, I would have probably benefited greatly, and it would have changed the trajectory of a few weeks. So that would be the easy answer.
Okay. Adam, any revisionist history for you?
Yeah, so I mean, like my easy answer was going to be, man, I took Stephon Diggs at number 9 and CeeDee Lamb went at number 10, and obviously CeeDee Lamb played really good. But I mean, Diggs, talk about a dumpster fire at the end of the season. The guy never got over 5 points. I think 1 week after week 8, he got over 5 points. But I mean, he did okay for me earlier in the season. He still finished top 20. I mean, that's a tough one. But for me, I look back and I thought, man, and here we go right back on the Ed train. Ed got Raheem Morris in round 11, I think at pick 126 or 128, something like that. And Raheem Mostert, who I've had in previous years, I mean, he went off and had a great season, right? I mean, and not only being a good running back, but man, you always want to have people that are part of that most exciting offense. Like watching Miami, watching San Francisco, just if you have even a fringe player on that team that's good, and he was better than a fringe player, it's so much more fun to watch those teams play. And so I ended up taking the Cowboys defense, who I dropped after week 1, or not before week 1, who Josh scooped up and scored 20 points the first couple of weeks of the season. And so obviously that was a bad move.
What round was Mostert?
He was round 11, I believe.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
those are the kind of gems you got to find, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because wasn't the talk that the rookie was going to or a young guy was going to take over?
If we lean back into Smitty world, they were talking about Dalvin Cook signing with Miami.
Yeah,
right.
And that was one of the reasons I picked him up, was thinking that maybe he would go to Miami. But then after that, they played the rookie?
A-Chain, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but he was hurt. He was hurt part of the time, but
and he did okay for Rennie, in spurts. But like you said, Mostert really
all season long, was right there.
Well, and they're a team that scores enough points that it didn't matter, right? Like you could have played both of those guys in certain weeks and still been fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though, we talked about how early on, anecdotally, it seemed like Josh was going to just be so dominant with the Tua and Hill. And Hill scored a lot, but a lot of weeks Tua was below 20.
Yeah. Well, I think
reason.
he ended up top 10, like in quarterback scoring. But that gets, there were weeks where he was probably top 4, and then there was weeks where he was like bottom 20. And so like that's the feast or famine that Josh had with Tua. He definitely didn't have the kind of season that I think Josh needed him to have if he was going to be really productive. And so that brings me,
So
like,
as
as we
nice
talk
as
about
Josh is, that when he didn't make the playoffs with Hill, when I heard him say that if he doesn't make the playoffs, he's going to burn Hill's house down. Do you think
didn't literally, right?
Yeah. So we're talking about the draft. We're talking about quarterbacks. You guys are two of the most successful guys that we have in the league this year, withstanding Dave. What do you think about quarterback play? Because I was just kind of looking back, and outside of your normal guys that we look at, really, do you think, as you were saying, Adam, in rounds 3 through 6, you're probably going to get a quarterback. It's when a lot of those guys kind of quarterback runs. Yet this year, you could have played any number of quarterbacks and probably ended up with the same amount of points, 20 points. Do you think anything will change next year with quarterbacks because of the injuries that we saw to quarterbacks and just the fact that like there isn't a great there is no Peyton Manning anymore. You know what I mean? Like you don't have guys getting drafted in the first or second round like we did, 10 or 15 years ago. But now it just seemed like a quarterback down year this year, or at least that there was just so much parity amongst all quarterbacks.
Yeah, so I think that definitely, if you look at the top 10 quarterbacks, you've got guys like Jordan Love, you've got Baker Mayfield, you got Jared Goff. These guys are top 10 quarterbacks. You got Patrick Mahomes, who's a fringe top 10 quarterback. But it's still the premium position, right? So how are we going to Joe Flacco? That guy's his average per game since he became the Browns is like 27 points. Like, I mean, ridiculous. But
Allen did separate himself a little bit. He had 27-point average for quarterbacks. So, you could still see him as being a premium. But, once you get past Allen, Hurts, Prescott, and Jackson, it really starts to dip into, like you said, Love and Purdy. Is somebody going to take a high draft pick on Purdy? Like, I don't know that you're going to draft him in the third or fourth round.
No, I picked him up way late.
Yeah,
Jordan Love didn't get drafted. Baker Mayfield. It's crazy the number of good quarterbacks that are out there that for the year. But is it a 1-year thing, or what are you going to see? For me personally, I always go into the draft with thinking rounds 3 through 8, and I have a quarter. A couple years ago, Matthew Stafford. I fell in love with him, and was able to get him where I wanted. I got Herbert, who I was did okay for me this year. You got to. I think you still have to find that quarterback. You got to find them in those rounds. It's the other ones are just going to be hit or miss. You have to get lucky.
Yeah, and I just think that the names are changing though. Like I just don't know if it's going to Stafford, Russell, Tua, like if those are going to be the guys next season that people are going to trust their their season with, or if it's going to be some of these younger guys like Love, you know. So
you think that a possible rule change that would affect the tush push would affect Hurts, or would he just throw it, more and still score those touchdowns, or at least some of them, because he got a lot of 1-yard touchdowns?
I think it would benefit the running back core. I think that they have running backs that probably don't get the kind of production that other running backs on other teams get. Stafford's not tush pushing, and so Kyrie's getting a lot of 1-yard touchdowns.
Yeah, like you had Swift on your team, Adam, a lot, and didn't always start him. Maybe that was in the back of your mind that he doesn't get a lot of 1-yard touchdowns.
He's not he's definitely not a touchdown maker. But Hurts still has, when teams have the weapons like an AJ Brown and a Devontae Smith. I heard a story that AJ Brown took a swing at Jalen
Yeah.
Hurts in the
Wasn't that a
in the
weird
tunnel. I don't know if it's
story?
true or not. I just heard that it happened. Man, super interesting taking a shot at your quarterback, but
'Cause I heard
Yeah.
him come out and say apologized for, but he didn't have anything to. It was really a strange press conference or whatever, like a statement that he made.
Things can fall apart quick. I mean, Eagles are
Losing
not
hurts.
looking good.
Losing, literally losing.
same with the Chiefs throwing temper tantrums or whatever you call it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and yeah, but I mean, so like you got Lee over there taking a swing at Junior in the locker room is what I'm picturing here
Yeah.
in the tunnel.
If
But
Junior
he's gonna have
gets
weapons.
swung on by Lee, it's going to be because he deserved it. Okay, you got to know.
And
But
it's
back,
only gonna be one. I mean, there's only
to
gonna
your
it's like one
quarterback
swing and it's over.
point, Adam points out, weeks or rounds 3 through 8 are important, but then a lot of people tempted to get some of these big name guys every year in round 3 or possibly even round 2, but the fact that there's other guys that emerged that you could get and that could score 30 points, like, does that tempt you to like hold and wait and pick 2 guys late, thinking that you could pick the
Yeah,
right week?
here's the interesting thing about it, and we all kind of experience this in different ways on our own teams. You can bypass picking up a quarterback in rounds 3, 4, or 5 if you want to, but are you guaranteed that that guy that you pick up is going to be the guy? You know what I mean? Like, we
Yeah.
all could look back at rounds 3, 4, or 5 on our own teams and be like, well, I got this guy. I thought he would be good, and then I didn't even end up playing him. So I think that it's this risk reward thing is like,
Yeah.
at a quarterback, as long as he
You-
doesn't get hurt and you pick him in rounds 3, 4, or 5, pretty good chance if you get Lamar Jackson, you're probably going to play him most weeks.
Yeah. It's one less position that you have to worry about, right? When you can lock in positions, whether it's a tight end or a quarterback, where you're going to play that same guy every single week. You don't have to, in a case like when I had Herbert all season long, I never carried a backup quarterback. I had that spot on my bench where I could use it for whatever I wanted to use it for. When you can lock in, your lineup like that, it's just one less position you have to worry about. And so if you get a Jordan Love next year or a Jared Goff or one of those guys, I don't know that it's a position where you can feel like it's always going to be set.
Yeah.
Whereas
And
you
like,
have Allen or Holmes.
So you had all these backups that played well. So what happens is, does Flacco get a starting job, and do people tempted to have him start? So that's a whole nother realm. Then you got Richardson that'll come back, and he showed some promise. We don't know what he'll be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with guys like Minshew. Like, I just heard the Bengals on the game the other day in the Chiefs game. They were talking. Bengals own his rights. Brownie's not going anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, if they don't want to let him go, like, they can keep him as a backup for as long as they want to, because he's on a rookie deal. Because he had never actually been a part of he'd been on the practice squad for 3 years. So some of these guys are locked in, but who have shown that they could probably be serviceable starters for certain franchises. You're going to have Russell Wilson's going to be on a new team. And so what does that mean if he's at the Steelers or somewhere else? And
Stroud ended up
pretty
low, but he had some weeks that were really tempting to have him on your team and play.
Yeah, I think Houston, and Adam and I both played at different times, Houston wide receivers. I think Houston will be on the rise. I think they're a season. I think next season people will have
he finished
more
at
Houston
14
Texans on their.
He missed a few weeks, right?
Yep.
Who's that?
So that's probably the only reason.
Stroud. Tank Dell was like doing great there in stretches, and then he got hurt. And I think that what's the name of the wide receiver that you had on your team?
Nico Collins.
Yeah, Nico Collins. He had
Noah Brown and
and
then Woods was still there as an afterthought.
I mean, it helped that they didn't have a running back named Damian Pierce play. That helped a little bit.
He actually ended up doing decent later. Like, he had a big kickoff return. I would have never known to do that. He was the weeks 2 and 3, he scored like 10 and 12, and I thought he did just enough to have me keep him for the next 2 after that, and he sucked from then on. So, bad idea.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave you guys with this as we, season's over. We're talking about next season, some of these teams that maybe will do good. Any idea of is it McCaffrey first? Is that you think that like going into next year, if he's healthy, is McCaffrey the number one? Not necessarily what would happen in our league, but do
Yeah.
you think that he's the preseason favorite to be number one? And then how do you see kind of like that running back, wide receiver, first round shakeup going? Look as we kind of project into 2024. Not a lot of information because draft and all that, like actual NFL draft hasn't happened, but you see anybody challenging McCaffrey for the number one overall spot?
I don't, unless somebody just is really in love with a wide receiver like Lamb or Jefferson and think they're going to blow up, and or Hill, that would be the only. I don't know that there's a running back.
Yeah, I mean he's the only answer at running back, and so I would say maybe if you're looking at all leagues, he probably is. In our league has definitely shifted. I think to where wide receivers are golden in our league, and so and Dave's the lone running back holdout, I think, and he's going to change that because he's going to have the bitter taste of the season in his mouth. But I think even a guy like Jamar Chase next year might be number one. And not only because he's a Cincinnati Bengal in our league, but I mean, I don't think T. Higgins is going to be on the team next year. I think Jamar Chase is going to get twice as many opportunities. I mean, they're going to play hopefully an easier schedule and have a better chance. So I think our league, I mean, you look at our league, Brian drafted 3 wide receivers in the first 3 rounds, I think. I think maybe Lee did the same thing.
Several people did. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 3 wide receivers in a row. And I went wide receiver. And I was stuck, I say stuck. I mean, I got Diggs and I was kind of forced into Cooper Kupp in the second round because I wanted to go wide receiver. But our league's values wide receiver. It's almost like we've gone too much. It used to be running backs. Now we've almost gone too far over, and it's wide receivers. And so at some point, it's going to make sense to try and get ahead of the curve and go back to doing running backs. But I think our league is wide receivers early.
Yeah, I agree. This past season, I actually went wide receiver, running back in an attempt to try to get more value. I didn't think that Taylor would sit as long as he did. I thought that he would end up on a team right away and that, that would have been a value pick for me at third. I still think that he provided a ton of value, in the season once he did get to play. But it hamstringed me in the fact that had I not picked up really good wide receivers off the waiver wire, and that's a crapshoot, my season would have went totally different because wide receivers I drafted, well, I drafted one and then Adam Thielen, and then I ended up letting him go because the first week he did bad and then he ended up doing good. And so that was that was my fault. But I do agree, like there's that tension between our league being overly wide receiver, because you have to play 3 of them. And so guys are going after them. And so you feel like you can get value at the running back spot, but you don't always know that those running backs are going to do, if you knew that, you'd pick Raheem Mostert in the 4th round,
11th round, right?
Yeah.
I actually went away from my normal heavy dominance on running backs this year, and so maybe I won't learn anything because I waited to get a second running back until round 5 and picked a bad one. So, I don't know, but
you want to make the change before everybody else does. That's the other thing is whatever's trendy, you want to be ahead of the trends, and so wide receivers are trendy in our league. So. I did 0 running backs a couple years ago, but now I'm starting to think, well, maybe you do have to do what Kevin did and get running backs early and go for that value. And
because and I still am, you think about, and I think this was a year before you ever were in the league, that there was I picked like 10th one year and nobody picked Sean Alexander, and I got him at 10 and won the league because he was number 1 running back by far that year. And so if you get that guy late, then I don't remember who my second round pick, but it would have been, pairing it up with somebody. I probably picked a running back, but if you get a gem like that late in the, who the guy that ends up being the best running back, late, it's a lot of help.
Well, just even going into this season, based off of production from 2022, Allen went 30th. It wouldn't have surprised me if somebody would have picked him in the second round. Just because it felt like, especially if you're in chat, that Junior was dropping a Josh Allen meme every single day. And you just thought, oh, these guys are just going to, but maybe it was a little bit of the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs controversy that was going into the season, maybe tamper that down a little bit. But I think that we also become, I would have seen that as being a prisoner of the moment a little bit, where it was like, oh man, I want a guy that just seems like he scores touchdowns all the time. And Allen was that guy, or Tua is that guy. And so then guys are just like, I want that guy on my team. Kind of like what Adam was saying earlier.
Yeah.
You got a few explosive offenses, and you're like, I want one of those guys on my team.
So it'd be like what's always interesting for me is because of the way our draft dynamics are, and that if you get to pick first, that means you get to pick your spot.
Yeah.
If you get the number one choice, what are you going to pick? And
Yeah.
I don't right this second. I don't know the answer to that question for me. Maybe you guys do. Do you know right now if you had the number one, what spot you would pick? You don't have to say what spot it is.
I feel like you get the most value being in the middle. I usually don't. So 4, 5, 6, I think 7. Those are pretty good places to pick. It kind of takes that pressure off of you of getting the
But
number
most people
one
don't do
pick,
that.
right?
If they get one and they get their first pick, they usually don't pick 7.
No, what do you think, Adam?
So I mean, there's a little secret in the sauce there. You can't spill everything out here on the
Right?
podcast.
Yeah. You don't have no trade secrets. You're fine.
I mean,
yeah.
but I mean, when you're a good manager, I mean, Kevin, you'll get there someday. When you're a good manager, you can draft from anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I remember a couple years ago, I let you pick my draft spot, I think, and I won everything that year when I picked 12th. I think that you have to. I always look at it as, hey, this is the player I want to pick in one of the rounds, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, and how do I get to that guy is where I pick my spot.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Adam's playing Texas Hold'em. He's like, I'm playing the man, not the cards. That's what he's saying right now.
I just feel like, and I don't have the data to show it, but I feel like most people that get the one, they don't go too far down. They
like to go 4.
Yeah, usually it's like 2, 3, or 4.
Popular.
I would never take a top. I would never be in the front.
So I ended up. I had a low.
Where did you draft? Because Travis drafted 3rd.
I drafted 2nd, but like I had a low pick. Like I could have picked 1st or 2nd, and I would think I was like pick number 9 or 10. You know what I mean? So it was like those were the ones that were left. 1, 2, and like 11 or like 10 was what was left. And so I was like, well, screw it. I'm going to take Jamar Chase or Jefferson. I'll take 2. You know what I mean? Because I think I said it on the podcast before. I didn't know what Lee would do with the first pick, and I just thought I'll get one of the wide receivers I want no matter what. But I like the fact of just having one sooner pick, coming back around than having the one pick. So
that's interesting. So you picked 2nd and you won the playoffs. Travis picked 3rd and he was right there in the regular season. I drafted 9th and won the regular season. So it's, again, it could be done from anywhere. Honestly, I also look at, so whenever it's my choice to pick, I mean, again, I overthink it, right? I overthink everything, but I always look at where other people are at in the draft too. So like, I'm scared, I know Josh and Lee draft a lot like I do. So I'm going to try and position myself where they're not going to steal the pick player right in front of me too. I take that into account. So a lot of it is playing against the other people, but I mean, I'm a back half of the guy. I'm a back half of the draft guy.
I think there's better value in that, especially in the 2nd round and in the 4th round. You know what I mean? Where you're going to get.
So what he's saying, Kevin, is we need to somehow finagle it to where he's he's 12.
No, he won
we only leave him 1, 2, or 3.
He was like number in 2022, the season he's talking about, where he won the league and the championship. He was one of the last ones. He's like, I don't care, Kevin. Tell me where I'm picking. And I said, well, you're picking 12th then. And then he ended up winning the whole thing. So it's
do you remember having to pick 1, 2, or 3 in a long time? Like back before we did you get to choose your spot, it was just wherever you got picked. So you could, unless you probably traded out of it.
Right. So I had a top 2 pick one time, and I think I traded it to Rennie for, $1 million. We traded 8 different draft picks.
Yeah.
And
Dave loves that when you do that. That's his favorite.
So I don't know. It's probably been a while then since you've actually had to pick 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah. I think it's been a while. Yeah. But it could be done from anywhere. It's just again, I think the more we've talked about this and just listening to Kevin and how his season came through, I hadn't put it all together, but it really reiterates the part that we started with. What's one of the keys? And the keys is to make moves. For better or worse, don't sit still. Make moves. Kevin made moves all season long, whether he had to or he didn't have to, but he made moves and it put him in a position to win the whole thing.
Well, and we put a lot of stock, or at least it drives the draft, the sheet, because you want to get value out of your pick, but then how wrong are most of those projections? When Mostert was a 10th round pick, like he should have had a way higher number, and somebody that wasn't really paying a whole lot would have picked him because his number was higher. He would have gone in the 5th round if he would have actually been based on this year's stats. Next year he'll be way up high, and somebody else will be, in the 10th round range, and they'll be the gem. So like we put so much stock into that sheet that you print out, as the draft goes, and people are just picking names because it's the next one on the list. And then we're sitting here after a full season of looking at stats, of real stats, and like, man, they were dead wrong on a lot of those things.
Yeah, I definitely think that if you show up to the tavern and the only thing that you've seen all season is what ESPN has on that paper, and you're looking at it for the first time, I mean, you can do fine because like the draft isn't everything, but you are at a disadvantage. I mean, I know that obviously Adam doesn't rely on that sheet of paper. Dave, you don't rely just on that sheet of paper. You come into it with your own idea of what you want to do. And, sometimes some guys love doing that. Some guys don't, they just want to eat chicken and drink some beer and they don't really care about all that. And then this is all just fun for them. So, but it's interesting. I don't know, Adam, if you had any, we're going to wrap up here. This is going to be one of our longest podcasts that we've had of the year, and we've had some long ones, but having a guest does that, and so it's been awesome having you on. I had talked a little bit about history and stuff like that. I didn't know if you had any history that you wanted to share before we signed off, or if there was anything an update of like how things are doing.
So we went into the season, and Dave Miller was our league leader in career season wins, and he is exiting not in first place. He's tied he's in second place right now. Rennie actually passed him up, so congratulations, Rennie, all-time leader in career wins right now.
On you, Rennie.
It's not so much what you did, Rennie, as much as it what Dave did, but congratulations anyways. We still got Kevin joining the list of two-time champions, which includes myself and Josh. Mike Kirschgashner. There he is. Blast from the past. So Travis and Dave still lead the way with 3 playoff championships each. Myself, my regular season record is pretty good. My playoff record, I've got a pretty good playoff record, but I've lost the championship 5 times. So I'm 2-5 in playoff championships, which kind of stings a little bit. I can get there, but I just can't get the job done. So, I enjoy putting the stats together and keeping track of it, and I think it makes for a good conversation, and I'll continue to do that as long as I'm allowed to. So
yeah, for sure. I think it's all. I mean, I think the cool thing is just knowing that, we've been with ESPN, I think 17 years now. Like we'll be coming up on, I think that, it won't be long. We'll be 20 years just in ESPN. We've been doing this league for, I've lost count of how many seasons that we've got, but Adam can probably tell us over 20 years.
I got 23 years of history here. So
23 years of
history.
But
you've been doing it a little bit longer than that. There was a couple years I don't think I had.
I think what happened was the first year that Yahoo decided to charge, I think we did it. We paid, there was part of our money went to pay Yahoo to be in it, just to have the league. And so then I found Fox, it was free, and there's a reason it was free. We only did it 1 year because they sucked. It was down like a lot of time.
We have kind of a lost year. I think we know who won that year, but we don't have any other season stats or anything like that from that season.
That was a Josh Rodemaker year. Yeah, it was like a 2002 or something like that.
I played Josh in the championship that year and lost, and
then we left Fox and went to ESPN and never looked back.
Well, and it was interesting, like when we talked about charging, if, Adam, I'm sure you were in fantasy leagues before ours, and so this was the big thing. It wasn't so much charging for, maintenance or anything like that. It was the live updates. It was the ability to get be able, while the game's going on, look at your phone or look at your computer and get the, live updates. I mean, in the very beginning, when we started this whole thing, you didn't get them until the next day, or you didn't get them
Yeah.
until after the game was over. They would calculate them and they would tell you what your score was, and you're sitting here refreshing, you know what I mean? Like, what was my score? In your back of your mind, you kind of know, because you're like, oh, I had Peyton Manning and he did this or whatever.
Pen and pencil,
But so like,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
we had to pay $10 each to be able to, on our computer while the game's going on, have live access to like live stat tracking. And then, you know,
But
as
even at that,
technology,
Yahoo had like a $20 or $30 just league fee.
like manager fee,
Yeah, just to,
and so
you know, they didn't even include the live stats.
What happened to the money from this year? Have you gotten it, Kevin?
Adam, I have been hitting refresh on my Venmo thing, and it's just like there's like I got a GIF I'm ready to send of like a guy just running with a suitcase of money
It's a
falling
whole
out
thing.
of it.
There's
Dave.
I
offshore
feel like Dave
accounts.
is normally in the basement, but like I feel like he's upgraded to an upper room, or
Yeah,
like I feel like
There's
Yeah,
is
there's
that
a
gold?
VR
Is that a gold plated?
offshore
Is that
accounts,
gold
there's
plated
shell
fireplace?
companies I have to go through. There's
He's
a lot
at a
of
VRBO right now.
there's a lot of red tape that has to go on before this money becomes you know, liquid, you know. So
Yeah.
I did post it right before we got on. I posted all the numbers, and only you two and Travis are the only ones that won more than the $60 entry fee. So you're the only ones getting anything, you know.
Well,
so
what Adam
Venmo to
doesn't-
you, is that what you want?
What's that?
Or do you not want Katie to touch it?
I'll text you and I'll come down and get
Okay.
it from you.
Adam,
Uh,
you got
Oh, I mean, just like every other year, just come by my house and drop it off. I mean,
I'm not coming all the way to your house.
hey, Dave, the alternative is maybe you can come to church sometime, because we go to the same church and I go every
That's-
week. So maybe occasionally you could come to church. Maybe
I'll
that's
bring blood money to church. Like,
what was I gonna say now? You've made me laugh.
'cause I don't know
No,
that
Adam gets an extra $50 from the side bet. Like, he didn't even
I
he didn't
got all
need
that
the
factored in.
he didn't win the he didn't need the championship. He already took our money in Dave's dumb side bet.
No, that was a great side bet. I enjoyed that. I liked it.
Yeah, we should do it next year. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
I heard Brian might join. So,
Okay. Yeah.
All right, yeah, exactly.
wait, so are you are you telling me we're going to end this podcast and there's not going to be any player trivia? Because you don't know how many times I watch a podcast and Dave asks a question to Kevin and I'm like, how in the world do you not know the answer to that question?
And
Are
then
you telling me
Kevin
there's no
says,
trivia?
the only other person that would know the answer to this is Adam, and you're probably right.
Yeah. Oh.
Hey, it
I'm
did
so
you well
disappointed.
this year. I used the name. I brought up Puka Nakua. You wouldn't even known that guy existed until it was too late.
Hey, Dave, thank you.
Yeah, and I didn't. I should have picked up the people that I had read about, and I didn't.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
that was week 2. I will let you know that I had already put in a waiver spot in that before we did that podcast for Kyrene, but I don't think that I had for Puka, and I was like, well, I'll try that guy. Dave said he's good, so thank you. I traded him to Brennan, and it helped Brennan win 2 high points. So
Yeah.
there you
Got
go.
me nothing.
That was a win.
We'll
Hey,
do
that
more-
was a win-win trade. Look at
Yeah.
that. Some
Yeah.
trades are win-win.
Yeah, I win the
There'll be
championship.
Adam. There will be more trivia next year. Well,
All right.
Yeah.
I
And
wanna
we'll
be
have
on
to
for
figure
one
out
of
a
the
way
trivia
where we
days.
can
Okay.
like phone a friend, yeah, or always if you're not going to be on the podcast, feel free to send us trivia questions. We're always looking for content. So, but Matt, seriously, I know we all joke and everything, and it's all fun competition. I do appreciate you coming on, and
Yeah.
congratulations on a great season. It is a
taking
testament
time out of
to-
your busy health schedule. It's great
Yes.
sitting there in your
Oh, yeah. I'm just getting ready for the night shift. This is early for me.
Yes. He's got some guys to go pick up from downtown.
Temptation is strong.
Yes.
yeah, Dragon
You
Souls to
feeling
Hell is a
good
busy.
about- You feeling good about the Chiefs going into the playoffs?
No. I mean, and I thought this for the last couple of years. They just played too much football. They just need to have a kind of a reset year and, a 10-12. I thought they'd win the division, but they've just played too much football. And quite honestly, Travis Kelce it might be time for him to retire. So I think that they'll lose. I mean, Baltimore looks so good right now. It's really, I've got a couple of future wagers on some other teams, and I don't have anything on Baltimore, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how to get something on Baltimore. So to me, they look like UConn looked in the tournament last year when nobody was talking about UConn. I mean, people talk about Baltimore, but UConn looked so good in the tournament. They were destroying everybody in basketball tournament, and they went on the national championship. I think Baltimore looks exactly the same.
You got a futures on Caitlin Clark winning.
Man, Indiana Fever, draft #1 pick, hopefully.
Goodness
Bring her home.
gracious. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Great season. For all of you watching at home, thank you for another great season. We will try to put together a BW3's reunion party sometime this winter and kind of celebrate all together. But it has been so much fun, and I can't wait till we go to the tavern in early September. So
let's do that.
have a
Let's do
great
that
night.
hillbilly golf outing too this year, man. Let's try and
Yeah.
get that on the schedule.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Adam.
Hey, thanks, guys. Great job. See ya.